Another god of fire in Japanese mythology is Sambo Kojin, sometimes referred to as Kamado-gami. Sambo is sometimes identified as an incarnation of the demon slaying Arya Kalanatha. Basically, going down this rabbit hole, you'd find out that many of these gods' worship is related to the sun. And the name Kamado wasn't just chosen out of the blue. All in all, everything is connected. According to the second fan book, the Kamado family has preserved the Hinokami Kagura as a ceremonial practice all the way to the present times. Tanjiro's great-great-great-grandparents are the practitioners of it, and they learned it from none other than the demon-slaying god himself, Yoriichi Sugikuni. It was Sumiyoshi who transformed his breathing forms into a dance because he said it resembled one. The term and technique Fire Wheel is in fact an inspiration from the classic yōkai Kashi, literally meaning burning chariot. Kashi are demonic beings with the head of a cat or tiger while having the body of a man and a fiery tail. They ride on burning chariots around the world, snatching up bodies of recently deceased of those who've done some really sketchy shit during their life, and it takes them right to hell. The passing of sun breathing as a Kagura draws heavily from Shinto mythology. In Japanese folklore, famous tales in volumes of the Nihon Shoki and Kojiki explains that the Kagura ritual originates when Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun, retreated into a cave, which plunged the world into darkness. In response, Ame no Uzume, the goddess of rivalry and dawn, danced outside the cave to entice the sun goddess out. From these events, the Kagura was born, a ritualistic dance that honors kami, gods and ancestral spirits. Likewise, sun breathing was disguised as Kagura and passed down as the Hinokami Kagura. His given name, Sanemi, is composed of the Kon Yomi reading of the kanji for seed, core, and the Gohan Yomi for all the more increasingly. Sanemi's surname has the Nonori Immortality River. As revealed during his bout against Gyu, Sanemi loves ohagi and considers it his favorite thing. However, his pride prevents him from telling anyone that he loves to prepare it. In Kimetsu Academy, Sanemi is a math teacher. He always keeps his collar open because he feels stressed when it gets stuffy around his neck, much like me, and never buttons up even at important family celebrations. When one of his students said, "Nobody needs math in the future," he tossed the student out of the classroom window like in Smash Bros. This became known as the Smash Bros incident. There was a kill Sanemi sensei plot for a while, but after this incident, the plan disappeared. Sanemi was always very kind to elders, women, and children, though kids tend to cry when he gets close to them. And he's very close friends with Kene sensei. They talk a lot. Tanjiro is the only known living human who knows the location of the blue spider lily. This is because his mother showed it to him, as it blooms in the daytime at a gravesite near their house. In the manga, you can clearly see this memory as it's in a flashback as he was about to be killed by Rui, but it's not shown in the anime. I wonder why. The Hashira are not only a separate group of elite demon slayers, but they have their own symbols on the back of their hands. Each symbol correlates with what breathing style they're associated with, unlike the normal symbols of demon slayers, which only tell their rank. This also is very similar to how the demon moons are organized. Out of the 9 Hashira, only 4 of them use standard Nichirin blades. Those 4 being Kyojuro Rengoku, Gyu Tomioka, Sanemi Shinagazawa, and Muichiro Tokito. The Hashira with the biggest appetite of them all is Mitsuri Kanroji. And the Hashira with the smallest appetite is Obanai Iguro. Obanai can go 3 days without eating. We mentioned that the anime is a lot like Bleach, like the ancient day samurai organization, fighting man-eating monsters to protect the weak, while a teenage boy is affected by all this, so now he has to leap in the fray to help out, and he ends up being the center and all hope for most things. And did I mention the stellar training arcs and the epic fights? Let me know in the comments what other similarities you see between Bleach and Demon Slayer. I'd love to hear them. Many people have noticed the similarities between Demon Slayer and Bleach, but did you know that there's a page in the Demon Slayer manga that specifically mentioned Bleach? There was a page that showed Muichiro the Mist Hashira. With this panel, none other than Aizen Sosuke in the back. Shows Koyuharu is a Bleach fan after all. Muichiro has the ability to literally sleep anywhere he chooses. Kind of reminds me of my best friend, who can fall asleep in the middle of an elephant stampede. I guess you could call this a superpower, but this is why Muichiro is always in peak physical form, because he always gets the right amount of sleep no matter what, and that's a lesson for everyone to learn. Another addition to the Mugen Train storyline is the addition of Tanjiro wanting to save the conductor who stabbed him. You see, in the manga this doesn't happen. Instead, Tanjiro knocks him out, and that's that. But in the anime and in the movie, we get to see Tanjiro be himself and save the conductor. I guess he knew that the conductor was being manipulated by the demon Enmu and didn't blame him, but Inosuke couldn't care less. For an anime exclusive scene that was only seen in the movie, we get a nice little monologue from the Demon Slayer leader Kagaya Ubuyashiki. This shows us just how much he loves the Demon Slayer Corps. One scene that was missing from both the movie and TV adaptation is a scene where the same dream essences hugged the intruder as his heart was opened up to Tanjiro's light. So we all know Demon Slayer turned its movie into a TV adaptation and came in with some added scenes. One of which is when Tanjiro had to off himself to wake up. In the meantime, his intruder fell into a black abyss due to Tanjiro waking up, and it was Tanjiro's dream essence that saved him, guiding him to safety out of Tanjiro's subconscious. This scene does appear in the manga as well, but not in the movie. I did state this fact long ago in season 1 of our fact findings for Demon Slayer, that Tanjiro doesn't know how to do Nezuko's hair, and that's why it's always been long with a clip on it. Of course, doing his hair doesn't really take much work. All he does is just cut it and leave it as it is. But over time, Tanjiro learned from watching Mitsuri do Nezuko's hair, so now he's a pro at it. Believe it or not, Nezuko was only 12 at the time she was introduced in the Demon Slayer series. Even though the years of Tanjiro she still looked as young as she did, that's because demons age much more slowly than humans. As thus, she can live for a millennia. This has been more than proven with Muzan's own long-standing life. Nezuko's birthday is December 28th, which would mean that in Western zodiac signs, she would be a Capricorn, which means that she's very dependable, practical, and very disciplined, which may overall contribute to her attitude to not eating humans, which can be seen throughout the Demon Slayer series. Demons, after being turned, seems to have their eye color changed. Well, for most of them. At least for the group that we're talking about today is Nezuko Kamado and Rui. You can see their real eye colors here, as opposed to their demon forms. Gyome loves to play the flute. He's pretty good at it and mastered it as well. Pretty cool. Tengen's favorite food is fugu sashi. As you might have known, fugu is puffer fish, and this dish is made up of tiny sliced pieces of fish in a decorative fashion. Because the #1 demon Kokushibo once killed the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, now the location of the leader is kept secret. On top of that, the Kakushi were formed as another layer of security. They're also the only ones who know the location of the Swordsmith village. Speaking of the #1 demon, Kokushibo is said to have held the #1 position since the time the demon moons were created, and he's the only demon to kill a leader of the Demon Slayer Corps. Akaza wants to be the best and most powerful demon in the world. However, he lost against Upper Moon 1 and got destroyed in battle. But instead of being killed and probably eaten, he was spared. Go figure. According to the pamphlets given in select Japanese theaters for the Mugen Train movie, for Ruka and all the wives in the Rengoku household, a tradition of the women is that they would stare into flames during their pregnancy, and this would go on for hours. This is a charm to make sure that their child grows up big and strong. It also has a mythical explanation for why Ruka's eyes are crimson red. The tradition is called Kankagari. I know you're a part of the group that isn't subscribed. You've watched the video up to this point, so why not do it? It literally takes one click. And while you're at it, drop me a like as well. It will bring you good luck. Kozo's wife is called En, and she is 2 years younger than him. The two of them are said to be a perfect couple. They even look alike. Do you know which of the 9 Hashira that we were first introduced to had been a Hashira the longest? Well, I have the answer for you. Mitsuri was one of the last Hashira to join, so we can leave her out. She's only been there for about a year. And we can cross out Muichiro and Shinobu, who's been there for about 2 years. Gyu and Rengoku had been there for about 4 or 5 years, and Sanemi for about 3 years. It's not really known when Iguro had joined up for about 6 years, leaving only one person left. Gyome has been a Hashira for 8 years, and that's amazing, considering how short of a lifespan a Hashira has. The knives that Hotaru uses to try to stab Tanjiro in his temper tantrums were actually made by Hotaru himself. These knives are noted to be extremely sharp and should never be used for cooking. Hotaru has wind chimes attached to his hat because he liked them since he was a child. Whenever he would throw a tantrum, the adults would use the chimes to calm him down. Hotaru's favorite food is mitarashi dango, and he goes out to buy some whenever he loses his temper. But that's not all. Kyogai was a fan of the Japanese lendarium, The Legend of the Eight Samurai. From this, he was inspired to work on his own biography. Kyogai's name contains the Kaien reading for loud and clear, resonant, to make a noise, sound, and echo, and also the Kaien reading for music of triumph. In Kimitsu Academy, Rui became famous overnight because he won a Cat's Cradle tournament. He even got a special article written about him in Kimitsu Town. And his particular facial moles became a hot topic on the internet because they were seen as cute. His full name is actually Rui Ayaki. Despite being killed, the powers that he bestowed on the family members didn't return to him. This could mean that he permanently lost his powers to the family members he shared them to who had been killed by demon slayers. It is revealed that contrary to his one-sided loss to Gyu, Rui was initially powerful enough to contend with a Hashira in battle, but his strength waned upon sharing his blood with members of the Spider family. The demon Mukago shares the same English voice actress as Mitsuri Kanroji, Kira Buckland. But did you know Enmu wasn't supposed to be a demon in the first place? You see, he was just a midnight snack for Muzan. But after Muzan heard all the praise that Enmu had given him, he had decided to turn him into a demon. As an adult, even though Enmu was not a doctor, he would misuse things like hypnotic therapies, as well as convincing his patients who didn't have long to live that they had fully recovered in their health. Even after they had realized that this was all a lie, he kept on doing these horrible scams over and over again. When Enmu was a human being, he had a tendency, since childhood, not to be able to distinguish between dreams and reality. This caused many problems for him and everyone around him. Nezuko is also incredibly good at rock, paper, scissors. When she and her brothers have to decide something and can't come to an agreement, they play rock, paper, scissors, which she always wins at anyways. Pretty underhanded if you ask me. Nezuko's favorite food is kompeto. This is Japanese colored sugar sweets shaped like tiny orbs with small bulges around it. In Kimitsu Academy, Obanai is a chemistry teacher. He has an allergy to women and always wears a mask. It's said that he keeps a snake around him in order to avoid contact with women. He often goes to Aoi's restaurant, but only ever orders tea. He would frequently ask if the girl with the braids is coming over. When his students fail tests, they are crucified to a post and shot at with bottle rockets. Don't think it gets more interesting than that. The Demon Slayer uniforms that we see are based off military uniforms of the time. For all those who's not familiar with Japanese history, the Demon Slayers looks like they're wearing school uniforms, like most Shonen Jump anime protagonists. But these aren't based off Japanese school uniforms, but rather the military garb at the time. Even stranger, school uniforms are actually modeled off the same military garb, rather than the other way around. It may seem that the show is portraying a light-hearted high school anime with these uniforms. In fact, in actuality, they're being just a little bit coy. We know that Inosuke's timeline is tied heavily to Doma, but did you know Kotoa Hashibira, which is Inosuke's mother, was also impacted by this sadistic demon? You see, Kotoa's husband and mother-in-law also went to the cult, possibly in search of her, but Doma found them to be noisy and murdered them. He didn't devour them though, he left their bodies out in the mountains. That's pretty sadistic. I've said so much random facts about demon slayers that sometimes I forget about the demons, but not this time, I got you covered. In Kimitsu Academy, beyond doing just fake marriages, Doma is a scam artist in various ways. He is famous to the point where he gets covered in a special news program on TV. He's also been involved in several incidents. But because evidence is insufficient, he's yet to be prosecuted. After greeting a woman with pink and green hair, he went missing afterward. Earlier at the crime scene, the voices of a man and woman fighting were overheard saying, "I had a feeling you were lying." One can only speculate as to what happened to him. Well, how about another former Hashira? Kane's surname is composed of the Kaien Yomi reading of kanji for butterfly. Kane's given name is spelled with 3 katakana characters, which are different from Shinobu, her biological sister, and is more similar to how Kanao's name is spelled. Sakonji resembles the real-life swordsman Miyamoto Musashi. Like Sakonji, Musashi lived out his twilight years meditating in remote mountains. He described his dueling style in a memoir titled Book of Water. And most damningly, Musashi also had a long line of prodigies who met unfortunate ends before he himself passed away. Speaking of a delinquent, Inosuke appears to enjoy eating tempura, as shown when he rests at the Wisteria Mansion and when he uses it as motivation during his training. Also in Kimitsu Academy, Zenitsu is a morals officer who ended up on the committee despite not wanting to be. He does uniform checks every day by the school gate while being terrified of delinquents. Poor guy. Speaking of Zenitsu, he loves sweet and expensive foods, more specifically high quality eel, more commonly known as kabayaki. So if he didn't become a swordsman, he would probably be a bit on the chubby side. So one thing that's been a double-edged sword for Tanjiro in both the anime and real world is his empathy bags are so big that he cries every time he hears a sad demon backstory. But that's simply because he can understand what it means to be turned into a man-eating monster against your will. Because his sister is one, and he knows that Muzan preys on the weakness of people, so he can use them to kill others. Can you really fault him for understanding this? At least he does get the job done, right? Or maybe he does get the job done, but one thing I know for sure will do him in is his inability to lie. You see, whenever Tanjiro lies, he can't keep a normal face, even if it's a lie for the better good of the mission, which is hilarious but dangerous and could get him killed. This is why we knew he was telling the truth when he said that Zenitsu was strong. Tanjiro's Nichirin blade actually appears in one of Jujutsu Kaisen's manga panels, and this goes into the theme of Jujutsu Kaisen always dropping some big hits like Dragon Ball Z and Lord of the Rings. Funny enough, when the button is pressed on the sword, you hear Tanjiro's voice shout out his breathing form. Pretty dope, right? I want one. In Kimitsu Academy, Genya is a first-year student belonging to class Kabosu. He is the shooting club's ace, and despite his hair-breaking school rules, they allowed him to keep it since he wouldn't be able to score a bullseye with a shaved head. This is because he uses his hair to read the movement of the wind. It seems that Genya is shy around women, breaking out into a blush and losing the capability to speak with them. This is seen when he was interacting with the love Hashira, Mitsuri, and the younger girls who worked at the Butterfly Mansion. Despite his rough exterior, he's a pretty cool guy. Did you know that Genya and Senemi had a younger sister that's named Sumi? I bet you did. And if you did you also know that she isn't the only Sumi in the entire Demon Slayer series? One of the girls from the Butterfly Mansion is also named Sumi. She and her sisters helped Tanjiro to learn the total concentration constant, and she also tried helping Nao and Aoi as they were being abducted by Tengen as he needed some girls for his mission. Aoi is the heaviest female character in Demon Slayer. You may not know this, but one of Tengen's wives is bisexual. That would be Suba, and it was her that persuaded Tengen to marry her. You see, Tengen's prospective wife was actually Suma's younger sister, but Suma wanted to go for herself. So she crashed through the door during the marriage interview, and wouldn't you know it, Tengen chose her. And in the end, she was also open to Tengen taking more wives. It's not clear if it's a polyamorous relationship or not, but in the end, if they're all happy, I guess we're all happy too, right? So here's something that I never stated before. Kanao's main hobby is blowing soap bubbles. She also enjoys buying sweets and accessories with her pocket money, and these gifts would be for everyone at the Butterfly Mansion. She does enjoy squishing cat paws as well and helping others with cooking. Oh, these sound so cute. Seems in between missions, Tanjiro has a small hobby. He writes letters. A few people which he writes letters to are Yuroko Daki, Senjiro, the ladies from the entertainment district, Uzui, and Tomioka. Although Tomioka never writes back. I think the main reason is because his crow is old and frequently loses his letters or gives him incorrect information. As such, he's always showing up late for fights and such. This may also be the reason why he showed up late to Tanjiro's family being murdered. I think it's time we invested in a better communication system. Don't you think? Gyu has never been seen smiling in the series, except for when he sees or eats his favorite plate of food, which is Siyaki Daikon. This dish is made with salmon and daikon radish in soy sauce. Yummy. Speaking of Shinobu, did you know that her favorite type of animal are fish? She actually has a pet goldfish called Fugu, which I found extremely funny because Fugu actually translates to pufferfish, which is incredibly poisonous, which comes right back to Shinobu using poison as her own fighting style, as she has little weak baby arms. Shinobu and Mitsuri are actually good friends. Maybe it's because they are the only female Hashira, but either way, they've learned a lot from each other, like how Shinobu learned to cook from Mitsuri. Yome's favorite food is Takikomi-Gohan, and this is a dish made by mixing vegetables and meat with rice. But he may not put meat in it since he's a monk after all. Inosuke got defeated by multiple Hashira. He was tied up by Gyu, manipulated by Shinobu, embarrassed by Tengen, and smacked into the ground by Gyome. Talk about a rough start, my boy. Sanemi and Muzan weigh the same, and they are of the same height, and oh, they are both super feared. I find it quite funny actually. What do you think about this crazy fact? Sanemi is the only other person, apart from this kid, who's been confirmed to have very unique blood. This is the blood of the Murichi, and it's said to contain nutrients of over 50 humans, and demons get intoxicated just at the smell. This is why it's particularly important when Nezuko was able to resist snacking on this juicy arm. That's also why Sanemi has so many scars. He deliberately allows himself to be injured by demons to gain the upper hand. Some of these wounds are even self-inflicted. Tengen has superhuman hearing, so much so that he can pinpoint people underground and even convert fighting moves into songs to help him better overcome his opponents. Pretty cool, right? We all know Tengen is the Hashira of sound, but what you may not have known is that he killed 2 of his own brothers. Why, you asked? This is how his father trained him to be. By fighting against each other and training non-stop, he would have raised some of the best shinobi in all of Japan. But Tengen was disgusted by this practice and so left after another one of his brothers had died. Here's Tengen's original design. Anticlimactic, huh? He looks like he has anemia with significantly less muscles and more of a wrapped face. Yikes, looks like he needs to hit the gym a little more. I'm really glad that we didn't get this design and we got this Chad instead. When Goku was first introduced, we see that he has a symbol on his back with some writing. Funny how Goku from Dragon Ball has something similar. But anyways, back to Demon Slayer. If this symbol looks familiar to you, it's because it's nearly everywhere. On the Demon Slayer title at the beginning of each episode, and also on the swords of the Demon Slayers. The symbol means destroy or exterminate. Within the manga, Rengoku's 9th form was not a dragon. It was the animation studio who decided to make it as such, and you know, the creator supports this and so do we. This perfectly emulates the power of his final strike, as dragons are seen as some of the most powerful creatures in all of modern folklore. So here's something that Inosuke did in the entertainment district that didn't make any sense. You see, these hand signs mimic perfectly 2 high-level demons, the first being Enmu and the second being Rui. But how could Inosuke know this when he wasn't present for both these scenes to see these demons in person? But you know who was? Tanjiro was. Well, maybe there's a possibility that Tanjiro told him in painful detail of these fights. Who knows? So remember when I said over the course of the series we see Inosuke changing? Well, that's pretty much the same in the entertainment district. You can see him with his hand on Tanjiro's shoulder, and you know by now he truly trusts Tanjiro with his life. During Gyutaro's last clash with the sound Hashira, he noticed that Tengen was pushing him back. As such, he slashed the chain that was holding the blades together, knowing that this was the only way Tengen was able to wield both blades, and then slashed Tengen's left eye to incapacitate him because he knew the poison would do the rest. And since his left hand was already cut, he would be completely helpless on his left side as well. Gyutaro may have done this specifically to finish the fight as soon as possible to help Daki. During the entertainment district when Tengen was fighting Daki and Gyutaro, there have been many callbacks to Rengoku's fight. For one, Tengen emulates the spirit of Rengoku in wanting not only to protect everyone, but also unrelenting in his fight no matter what. On top of that, we can see scenes like this, which are a mere mirror image of Rengoku's fight, right down to the injuries Tengen sustains, minus the hand through the gut. Censorship in China is very strict, so much so that many of the revealing outfits of some of the characters, like Daki and Tengen's wives, were altered to make them a little bit more modest. Kinda looks funny if you ask me. When Gyutaro was berating Tanjiro about his looks, these were the same words that were used on him when he was a human, being abused by these witches. Furthermore, when Daki regenerated her leg, she also regenerates her clothes and shoes as well, as demons are able to create objects with their own flesh. In the case of Daki, she can create multiple flesh-like obi that resemble cloth, and even materials hard enough to resemble shoes, or slippers in her case. Very, very heavy slipper. During the Daki vs Tanjiro fight, when she was held by the leg, many think that Tanjiro was the one who cut off her leg, but that's not quite correct. You see, he held it so tight that when she kicked him, it ripped right off. Seems the entertainment district arc opening is filled with little details that we would all miss, and I'm sure this one would be super easy to miss as it's only a few frames. When Inosuke was running on rooftops, we see Tengen's mice running alongside him, showing not only that they are important enough to get a cameo, but also their sequence of appearance with Inosuke first. During the opening of the entertainment district, we get a cameo from this young man. He's the same young man that gets his hand cut off by Daki later in the series. And I thought the guy that got punched in his face by Inosuke was unlucky. Man, Inosuke accidentally hits this guy in the face. Coincidentally, he's the same guy that gets punched in the face when Inosuke is trying to capture Daki's own sash, while he was making its getaway. Talk about unlucky, dude. During the entertainment district's opening, when it shows the boys, behind them we can actually see the owners of each respective house that they later infiltrate. But that's not all. At the opening of the first episode of the Mugen Train arc, we actually see a girl that resembles Nezuko's human form. Here's another interesting change they did from the manga. In his first fight with a demon, this would have been the temple demon, we saw where the demon's body fell off a cliff and hit a rock. But in the manga, the demon's body actually splattered. Yikes. Episode 4 of Demon Slayer was mostly an anime exclusive episode, with most of the events all taking place within a single manga panel. But the animators went ahead and made sure we got some incredible animation of Urokodaki cooking Tanjiro's meal, Tanjiro getting his haircut, and Tanjiro finally receiving his warding mask from his master, Urokodaki. Tanjiro and Nezuko can speak to the dead. Well, maybe. This may be something special that's shared between them, because we've seen several times throughout the series with them communicating with their dead family members. Well, mainly Tanjiro, that is. So it's a highly plausible fact. Within the same opening, it actually shows Tanjiro's story of the first season of Demon Slayer, starting with him carrying Nezuko, his training, the final selection, meeting Zenitsu and Inosuke, and even Muzan in chronological order. But that wasn't enough. We also get to see his battles with demons, showcasing their demon blood arts. We also get a great shot of all the Hashira and then the Natagumo arc. But there's something I bet you didn't notice. It's only after the Hashira meeting episodes that in the opening now it showcases all the Hashira faces. Pretty cool, right? There is one fact that I'll spoil. All the Hashira are currently subscribed to Vari Studios TV, and they're doing tryouts. So if you don't want to miss out on your chance to become a powerful Hashira yourself, hit that subscribe button with notifications on. Did you know that some demons like Akaza and Daki were seen in the very first episode of the anime? Within the opening scenes, when we first see Muzan standing before 6 figures, of course these are the top 6 demons, as we see both Akaza and Daki standing there. And if you've read the manga, you know that the others are also the top demon moons as well. Really interesting that the series would show them this early. But it just doesn't stop there. When it comes on to Tanjiro's hands, we can't ever see a time when the studio didn't get it right. You see, due to his intense training, we saw that his hands were badly worn down. And due to his constant training, it's only natural that calluses would form and his hands would be incredibly rough. We are reminded about that every single time his hands are shown on screen, and even in the manga too. You know, I found something within the Wisteria episode. I noticed that Inosuke was wearing his old clothes after he was seen wearing some new ones, only to be asked to put on some new robes once more. This doesn't seem to fit within the story anywhere, and it seems to be a continuity error. If it is, then it would be the first one I've ever spotted. Let me know in the comments below if you think it was a continuity error as well. If you didn't notice, our heroes go through certain changes throughout the entire series, but most noticeably would be that of Inosuke. The first time we met him, he behaved like a wild animal, but it seems to have changed when they headed off to the Natagumo Mountains and came back down. After that, he calmed down a little bit, even holding on to Tanjiro, proving just how much he trusts him now. Aww. Both Kanao and Shinobu wears accessories of the previous flower Hashira as a homage to her. Shinobu wears her Hiyori, while Kanao wears one of her hair accessories, which to say the least shows how much they loved and adored her. Though it's been implied that there are or were many, Kanao is the only implicitly stated Tsuguko in the entire Demon Slayer series. Though Tanjiro and the gang came very close to being the Tsuguko of Rengoku and Tengen. Both Enmu and Muzan have the most westernized style of dressing in the entire anime. And with it being the Taisho period in Japan's history, it really says a lot about the transitions the fashion and culture was going through at the time. If you want to learn more about this, check out our video on 10 historical connections that Demon Slayer has to Japanese culture. It's a real eye-opener. Here's something you've never heard about the flower Hashira before. As a human, though she was a merciless demon-killing machine, she was much like Tanjiro, in that she understood that being a demon wasn't most of their faults, but never failed to cut a demon's neck. But she always wore a smile and always had kind words to part with a demon before she sent them to the afterlife. Some of them even said she was a benevolent maiden. Most, if not all, of the current Hashira have had run-ins with demons who influenced their life to turn them into demon slayers. But did you know that it was Gyome who saved Kane and Shinobu from a brutal death at the hands of a demon who killed their parents? Tragic, if you ask me. If I haven't said this before, let's clear the air. The title Kimetsu no Yaiba literally translates to Demon Slaying Blade, which if you look at it is a pretty great play on words, since demon slayers use blades to slay demons. Right on the nose, I'd say. It's rumored that demons are modeled after the plague. If you take a closer look at each of their names, it becomes much more apparent. This was never actually stated or confirmed in the manga or anime, but here are some examples. Nakime is modeled after Pink Eye, which if you translate her kanji name, it would mean 4 weeping eyes, and with her already large pink eye, it sells this fact even more. Gyutaro and Daki are modeled after syphilis, Kaigaku after human scabies, Akaza after measles, and Doma seems to be modeled after stage 2 tuberculosis. But you get the deal already. If you did spot any that I missed, please let me know in the comments. One demon that we don't know much about is Lady Tamayo, but let's start out with what we know. Tamayo's first name contains the kanji for bead, pearl, gem, or jewel. And the last part of her name, which is the yo, contains the kanji for world. Not much, but pretty interesting if you ask me. Lady Tamayo is at least 500 years old, as she was shown thriving during the same time as Yorichi, and must have been transformed into a demon sometime before that, which proves how old she must be. After her release from Muzan's grips, she survived on eating animals and human corpses, later transitioning to human blood. She refuses to obey her demonic instinct and never attack humans, despite how much pain she felt. Kanao has a habit of gulping when she saw her favorite food and drink in front of her. She seems to be unaware of this though. We all know that Kanao has issues making her own decisions, but did you know that she keeps a coin that was given to her by Kane in a memory box that was also made by Kane? Stay tuned in the video to hear more about how she pays homage to her rescuer and teacher. On volume 18's cover, Kanao was mistakenly drawn with her sword to the right side of her waist. Koyuharu made a statement apologizing for this after the volume's release, but then it was later on corrected. In chapter 100 of the manga, which is when Tanjiro was recovering from his battle after Gyutaro and Daki, Goto had said that Kanao was actually slaying demons since she was a child. Now, this statement is much heavier when you consider that Kanao was introduced to the story when she was only 16. She's already a child, which means that she's been slaying demons since she was in the single digits. Gyome's father died of a disease while his mother died giving birth to him. Sometime later he was blinded due to a fever. But in spite of all of this, Gyome had taken a keen sense of sight that he was able to avoid malicious actions that people around him would do to him, like trying to make him trip or throwing stuff at him. This made people around him call him a liar, stating that no blind person could do what he does. In Kimitsu Academy, Gyome is a civics and first-year homeroom teacher. He's so muscular, students were afraid of him at first, but because his personal belongings generally have cats on them, everyone quickly became aware that he's a nice person who loves cats. There are many instances of people calling him Dad by accident, which is just perfectly fitting for him. Many anime and manga pay homage to the artist's favorite series, and Demon Slayer is no different. It has popped up in a few other properties. One such manga is Tonikaku Kawaii. In chapter 137, you can clearly see Obanai and Mitsuri enjoying a meal together. You might even recognize that I said Tengu there, and you might have guessed it that Urokodaki's warding masks aren't the only Tengu references in Demon Slayer. In the Swordsmith Village arc, we get introduced to the number 4 upper rank demon, Han Tengu. And as you might have guessed, his name contains a Tengu reference, but that's not all. Just like a normal Tengu spirit, he even has a form that flies. I'm really happy that Demon Slayer is much deeper than what most think, and has these deep-seated Japanese folklore embedded right in the story. The previous water pillar, Sakonji Urokodaki, wears a warding mask to hide his face and the face of his students. In fact, he's always made new ones for every student he's had. But what many people didn't know is that to design his mask, he uses beings from Japanese folklore. His very masks are based on the Tengu, a being that's known for warding off evil spirits, much like the Demon Slayers try to do. Tanjiro's Hanafuda earrings are a topic much up for debate on many forums on websites even now to this very day. But why do you ask? There's still no confirmation on why they're there in the first place. They were worn by his ancestors, or at the very least, the very first Breath of Sun user, but we don't know what their design refers to. Hanafuda cards are Japanese playing cards, and most of them are based on flowers. One even has the wisteria flowers on them. Some say Tanjiro's earrings are of flowers as well, but they kind of look like the sun to me if you ask. And there aren't any cards that specify this symbol. But hey, we can only speculate, right? Many people were actually incredibly surprised to see Muzan in the earlier episodes. What's even more interesting is the obvious European style dress clothes that he sports. Where would he get these clothes? Well, this actually ties back to the Taisho period, where Japan had opened up his borders to the rest of the world, allowing new influences to come in. Just another micro detail that makes the time period feel a little bit more realistic and believable. Turns out a lot of the fashion sense in Demon Slayer is based on actual Japanese history. You see, the tabi socks we commonly see are period relevant as well. The ankle warmers everyone seems to be wearing are called kyahan, and they were under padding for samurai. Now, the two-toed socks that we all see them wearing are known as tabi, a very traditional style of foot covering for the time period. The sandals they wear are known as zori, and again, it makes sense for the time period. As you might have known, samurai weren't wandering the countryside in green and black checkered clothing or pig masks, but most of the normal clothing that they wear does seem to have some historical significance. Even Nezuko's odd leg wraps and overall garb made sense for living in the snowy mountains as the Kamado family did. This flashback of Tengen visiting his family's graves with his wives right after episode 9's opening doesn't appear in the manga, but I'm genuinely grateful that they added it. It gives more context about the characters, which is always appreciated, though it's kind of a double-edged sword since it makes you care about them a little bit more and kills you on the inside when they die, but it's truly worth seeing and highlighting. At the end of the battle with Daki and Gyutaro, Tanjiro had patted Nezuko on the head. However, in the manga, you can't see his broken fingers as they're pretty much fine, but in the anime we do see that his fingers are broken, which is a great detail and actually fixes the oversight in the manga. Want to learn more amazing facts to level up your Demon Slayer knowledge? Click on one of the 2 videos on your screen right now, or join me again for the next Demon Slayer video. Peace out, stay safe out there.